Wine and Crime contains graphic and explicit content which may not be suitable for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
You are listening to Wine and Crime, the podcast where three friends chug wine, chat true crime, and unleash their worst Minnesotan accents.
Oh, yeah.
And
We're
eat
here.
snacks.
Oh, yum.
Yeah.
I just
Memory
made
and
some
lip
hummus,
gloss.
my bitch.
Okay.
She didn't stand a chance, bro.
I think hummus made you its bitch.
I don't know. I haven't shit myself yet, so we'll see. For now,
Time
it's-
will tell.
For now, it's Amanda 1 hummus eaten.
Hourglass emoji.
Oh God, it's so ominous. So ominous.
Yeah, Lucy likes to scare the bejesus out of me and
That
Amanda
was
by
an
just
accident.
texting the hourglass emoji when
You
we're
know what you
running out of
did.
time.
Yeah. You know what you did.
It
You're like a
was
death
not
clock.
intentional. I mean, it is now. It's
TikTok.
intentional now.
TikTok, bitch.
TikTok.
I'm about to show up at your house.
You're 1
The
minute
clock
closer
is
to death.
ticking.
Oh my God. Happy birthday. You're 1 year closer to death.
I have a birthday card.
I literally just was thinking, I'm pretty sure you gave me a birthday card that said that like 2 years, like when I turned 30 or
It
something.
said you're almost there. The Grim
Oh my
Reaper.
God. Oh, Jesus Christ.
All right. Well, this week we have a very special episode brought to you by us because it is Hog Girl Summer.
Hog Girl Summer, baby. Boo, boo, boo.
And so we have selected the topic of Innocence Project.
Yeah.
Which another heavy hitter episode that we haven't gotten to yet, which
This
is
one
exciting.
just fell right into our laps.
It really
It
did.
sure did.
Serendipitous.
We got a lovely email from the co-founder of the California Innocence Project, and we were like, "Why, yes, we would love to speak to you because what you do is incredible." So we will get to that, but first, Amanda, what is our wine crime pairing for the Innocence Project?
Well, I wanted to pair something a little bit fun. So I found this winery out of Oregon called St. Innocent Winery. Oh. And they have a lovely Pinot Blanc on their roster. And I don't know if I have ever paired a Pinot Blanc. I'm sure I've paired it like as part of blends.
Sure.
But I don't think I've ever done it as like a full-blown PB. You know what I'm saying?
Pin Blanc.
Yeah.
So these tasting notes ask you to imagine sticking your nose in a box of fresh, ripe peaches on an ocean beach with the salt in the air, about to swallow a fresh oyster.
Oh.
Oh.
I have never been so transported in my life.
Heaven?
Yeah. Yep. So the palette of this wine follows that kind of like beachfront, no worries, Hakuna Matata theme. It's going to be kind of peachy on the front end, followed by pear, and then a really nice
Oyster.
kind of a little minerality, a little salt, a little texture. It's just like a really complex white wine. And so the way that this grape is grown is under like long hours of sun and hot during the day, but then this nice, cool nighttime, like overnight cool nap. And then because this is grown like, you know, on the like near the Oregon coast, you're going to get some of that salinity as a result of like very old ocean floor that's now the land that we walk on. So fucking crazy.
What?
Crazy.
All right.
Well, I mean, you get some of that, like, you get specific types of soil on more
Pleistocene
like coastal
soil?
Well, sure. On more like coastal.
Dinosaur dung?
Sure. Some dung.
Old seashells.
Yeah, this vineyard particularly is located in the foothills of the coast, which is like 10 miles southwest of Salem, Oregon. I didn't even know they had a Salem.
Oh, yeah.
Who knows? But this yield comes from vines that have been growing since 1993. So this is like the same hardy yield from those same vines that they planted years ago, which I think is pretty fucking cool.
My case takes place in 1993.
No way!
What?
The fuck?
Pleistocene.
Yep. Anyway, this is an incredible wine to go with oysters, clams, other delicious seafood, crab, sashimi,
Oh.
And also, it's just going to be fucking good. So check it out. You can order their wines online from, I think it's saintinnocentwine.com. And they have a lot of really cool stuff. And they ship. And I think they also offer a wine club, which I always love.
Love a
You
club.
know? Yeah. So shall we pop?
Let's
Yeah.
All right. Here we go.
do it. Salty oyster
Briny.
Peachy pop.
Fucking dinosaur dung, y'all.
Yes.
The
Cheers,
land we're now
bitches.
walking on, pop.
The land before time, pop.
I had a really good, how do you say it? Chenin Blanc?
Chenin Blanc, yeah.
Yeah, last night. And I
Yum.
was like, I need to have more of this.
I
Yeah,
love Chenin Blanc.
That shit's good.
So fucking good.
All right, well, cheers.
Cheers.
And Lucy, do you want to tell us about your very special background and psych segment for the Innocence Project?
Well, I sure as fuck do, but
Oh,
not
shit.
before I tell you about the Innocence Project overall.
Okay.
So, Innocence Project Incorporated is a 501c3 nonprofit legal organization that is committed to exonerating individuals who have been wrongly convicted through the use of DNA testing and working to reform the criminal justice system to prevent future injustices.
So every single case they take is wrongful conviction through DNA, or like the exoneration is always through DNA.
I don't think so. Not every.
Mine
Mine does not involve DNA, as far as I
Okay.
know.
Well, my understanding is that they do not take cases that are just their primary. You know what? We'll get to it. Let's answer this when I'm done with my part.
Okay.
So they estimate that somewhere between 1 and 10% of all prisoners in the United States are innocent.
That's
wild.
terrifying.
As of 2021, the Innocence Project has helped to successfully overturn over 300 convictions through DNA-based exonerations.
Damn.
Their stated mission is, quote, to free the staggering number of innocent people who remain incarcerated and bring reform to the justice system responsible for their unjust imprisonment.
Yes.
So the Innocence Project focuses exclusively on post-conviction appeals in which DNA evidence is available to be tested or retested. DNA testing is possible in 5 to 10% of criminal cases.
So my case is related to who you spoke with, but maybe it wasn't an official Innocence Project case. And maybe that's why the DNA testing was not relevant.
Okay.
We'll get to it.
Okay.
Mine is definitely an Innocence Project case because I pulled it from their website. They have like a whole list of exonerations that they specifically like had a role in.
So the whole point of them focusing on DNA evidence is because the whole Innocence Project was founded in the wake of a study by the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Senate in conjunction with Yeshiva University's Benjamin N. Cardozo School of Law, which looked at the fallibility of eyewitness testimony.
Right.
So basically, when they discovered how fucked up eyewitness testimony was and was able to quantify that, they were like, ooh, we cannot rely on this anymore. We have got
definitely
to
get to that in
find
my
different
case.
evidence.
Damn.
So it concluded that incorrect identification by eyewitnesses was a factor in over 70% of wrongful convictions.
Yeah. It's crazy unreliable, dude.
So that's why they focus exclusively on DNA evidence.
That makes sense.
Because it can be pretty incontrovertible if you were like, no, really, this other person's
It's
DNA.
their cum.
Right, yeah, exactly.
We know.
Yeah.
The
Look,
amount
hard to
there's
argue
his
with.
sperm. That one's name is Hank. It looks just like him.
The amount of work
he did it.
that goes into these Innocence Project cases is so fucking extreme and vast
Takes years.
that they have to have airtight evidence.
Right. It makes sense.
Other members of the Innocence Network also help to exonerate those in whose cases DNA testing is not possible.
Got it.
So the Innocence Project does focus on DNA, but there is an Innocence Network.
Yep.
That these are technically two different things.
Okay.
So the Innocence Network, is my understanding, is a network of lawyers who work on this kind of stuff, and the Innocence Project is lawyers and also
They have their own
people who are
labs for
experts
DNA
in the
testing.
DNA stuff.
Right.
Okay.
So, as Kenyon mentioned, I had the privilege of talking to Professor Justin Brooks, who is a professor of law at California Western School of Law in San Diego, and he is the director and co-founder of the California Innocence Project. He's so smart and so funny and very handsome. He wrote the only legal casebook devoted to the topic of wrongful convictions.
Wow.
And he has founded and supported several Innocence Projects in Latin America. He's doing an enormous amount of incredibly valuable work, and I had a very insightful conversation with him a few weeks ago. So let's just scoot right along, have a listen to that interview.
Absolutely.
So I have Professor Justin Brooks with us today from the California Innocence Project. Thank you for being here with us.
It's my pleasure.
And you are the director and co-founder, is that right?
That is correct.
And you're also a professor of law?
Yep.
So we recently learned the difference between a lawyer and an attorney. Are you a practicing attorney?
I am a licensed practicing attorney, and I'm licensed in 4 states.
Wow. So you're a smart guy.
Reasonably.
So we know a little bit about the Innocence Project. Tell us about specifics about the California Innocence Project. I would assume that California, being a really large state with kind of unique legal codes, at least that's how it seems from an outsider. How does this Innocence Project organization differ from, let's say, one in Mississippi?
Well, I think it differs in the same sense our country differs state to state. You know, one of the things whenever I'm traveling around the world talking about criminal justice issues is people don't understand how unique the United States is, and that we have 50-some penal codes, and that on one side of the street, something can get you the death penalty, that on the other side of the street can get you 20 years in prison, and somewhere drugs are legal and other places they're not. That's very unique to the United States and only a few other countries. So the California Innocence Project reflects California. We are a massive state. We are the most populous state. We have had the largest prison population for most of the past 20 years. We had the most people on death row until it recently was suspended. So I moved to California back in 1999 to start the California Innocence Project. That time, there were just a handful of us doing this work around the world, and there were about 4 or 5 innocence organizations in the United States. So I started it here because this was the biggest challenge. It was the largest state with the most people in custody. And since then, we've been freeing innocent people from prison. We just walked out our 40th innocent person.
That's amazing. So this is an actual question, but how do you sleep at night? Like, given the enormity and the consequence of the work that you do, I get hives just kind of thinking about that kind of pressure.
I don't sleep well at night. I haven't in decades. So I usually sleep around 12 to 5. That is the hardest part about this work. I spend a lot of time talking about it with my lawyers and my law students that, you will have a lot of dead bodies in your head. You will have a lot of crime scenes in your head, and you've got to do mentally healthy things to counter that as best you can. But no matter what, this work will pile up on you and be emotionally difficult.
Is there kind of a line where I would imagine that this kind of work, I would have kind of doubts in my own mind about a specific individual's innocence or guilt? Obviously, you do a ton of research and you know their background, but ethically, morally, do you personally question, a case-by-case basis, if a person is deserving of the work that you're doing for them for their case?
Every single day. So we receive about 6,000 requests for assistance a year. And with every single case, a law student will look into it, and they'll get copies of transcripts, they'll talk to the trial lawyers and the appellate lawyers, and an initial investigation will be done. And then twice a week, there's presentations in my office where I have the awful Caesar-like power of thumbs up or thumbs down. And most of the time, my thumb is down because, and it's not necessarily that I think they're guilty. It's just that for the overwhelming majority of the cases, I know from my 30 years doing this that we're not going to be able to prove it. And it's heartbreaking because there are a lot of innocent people who get locked up who will never have a chance of getting out. And, you know, for example, we get a ton of people writing to us saying they're innocent of drug crimes. And the problem with drug crimes is they only have two elements. And that is you had drugs and you knew you had drugs. And if the jury doesn't believe your story that you were just catching a ride home with your friend, the car gets pulled over, your friend has cocaine in the car, now you might very well be innocent. But I know from my experience I can't do anything with that case because once the jury didn't believe that you didn't know there were drugs in the car, it's over. And that's the hardest part of this work. It's not so much that, you know, oh, I'm worried that we might represent a guilty person. There's no chance we'll ever free a guilty person because the standard is so high to prove innocence. And that's our burden, that I know that's never happened. And I know it's never going to happen. But what does happen every day is we turn down innocent people. And that's very difficult.
Are there any specific cases that stand out to you that you can think of that maybe was uniquely challenging, kind of digging for one that had a good outcome?
Sure. Well, I just sat down for the past year and gave thought to that because a publisher asked me to write a book about my 30 years of experience freeing innocent people from prison. And my new book, which is called You Might Go to Prison Even Though You're Innocent, is now available.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's now available. It is a scary title, and it's a scary book in a lot of ways. But it's now available for sale on Amazon and wherever they sell books these days. So many cases stand out in my mind. Some that were very complex and required, you know, DNA evidence to kind of unwind. Other ones are as simple as, you know, the case I'm probably most well known for is the Brian Banks case because a movie was made out of it, and my client ended up playing in the NFL after he was exonerated. But Brian was just a simple case where a 15-year-old classmate, when he was 16, accused him of rape. And his lawyer ended up pleading this case out, and he went to prison for 6 years. And the girl then came forward and Facebook friend requested him and then said, can we let bygones be bygones? I'm sorry I made that stuff up about you raping me in high school. And, you know, so a wrongful conviction can be as simple as just somebody tells a lie. But then, you know, you have other cases that are so difficult to unwind based on the forensic evidence. And I've had many cases like that. The most complex are our baby death cases where children have died in accidental ways. And we have the Herculean task of proving that. And we've done it a number of times. One of my clients named Suzanne Johnson got convicted after a baby fell out of a high chair. And she spent many decades in prison. Alan Jimenez, another one of my clients, spent decades in prison. Ken Marsh spent 20 years in prison, even though his girlfriend said over and over again that this baby fell off a couch. Because the doctors didn't see that the baby had a blood disorder, which is what caused excessive bruising, they didn't believe that the baby could have been injured that way from a short fall. And so those cases are very, very difficult. And what my book does is I go through what I've deemed as sort of the top 10 causes of wrongful conviction. In fact, that's what I wanted to call the book, but my publisher said it was too clickbaity.
It's a listicle.
I thought clickbaity was good, but evidently they don't want to sell as many books as I do. But, you know, and the leading one that I spend a lot of time in my book talking about is bad identifications. Jurors put a lot of weight when someone walks into a courtroom and says, I'm 100% sure that's the person who committed the crime. And we now know after studying identification procedures and how people's memory worked, that that's not very good evidence. It's not very strong at all. And yet I see client after client convicted on that alone, just a simple identification.
You would think that a jury would need a lot more hard evidence than just eyewitness testimony.
Well, they absolutely should. But I'll give you an example of an outrageous case of that. My client, Raphael Madrigal, was working 30 miles away from a crime scene in a factory on the line when a shooting happened. He got convicted based on a cross-racial identification, which are typically the worst, people identifying people not of their own race, done of a photo taken when he was a teenager, and he was nearly 30 when the crime happened. We were able to prove definitively that he was working at the exact moment of this shooting because the owner of the factory said he was the only one trained to use this laminating equipment in the middle of the assembly line, and the whole factory would have shut down if he wasn't at work. We got 10 witnesses that put him there. We got his time cards that put him at work, but his lawyer failed to do that investigation. And then we also, on top of that, got a jail phone call where the guy who actually committed the crime is talking to his girlfriend saying, I don't know who this guy Raphael Madrigal is, but he went to prison for his crime that I committed.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And that was enough for the jury. The jury heard this one woman comes in and says, that's the guy, he did it. Nothing else. No motive, no physical evidence, nothing linking him to this crime. And that's a frightening thought because as the chapter of my book is called, You Look Like Other People in the World. Because if you remotely look like other people in the world, you could be wrongfully convicted.
Well, especially like you said, that cross-racial identification, identifying someone outside of your own race, this just seems so problematic. There should be I don't know if legislation is the answer to making rules about jury decisions. I don't even know if that's possible, but that just seems like a big load of bullshit.
It is. And we have got legislation passed finally in California. The county of Los Angeles, the largest county in the United States, has fought us for years about changing their identification procedures because they don't comply with any of the scientific principles. And now they have to do things like, for example, you can't have an officer who's investigating the case involved in the ID procedure because they know who the suspect is in a lineup. And they always have tells because they're horrible poker players. And so the witness will say something like, well, it kind of looks like number 3. And then the officer will say, good job. Okay, good. And now in the witness's head, it goes from it kind of looks like number 3 to by the time they come to court, they're saying, I'm 100% sure it's that dude.
Yeah, it's like positive reinforcement.
Exactly. And that's particularly true in violent crimes. I mean, in rape cases, for example, the victim obviously has a desperate need to have the person caught and off the street and feel safe. And all that psychology, I don't want to say the police take advantage of that, but the combination of that fragile a witness in that situation, and then they're given assurances this is the right person, is how you end up getting a wrongful conviction.
Yeah, the way that your brain can alter your memories, that you can be 100% sure that your memory is accurate, it's wild to me.
Yeah, you can even change your own memories. I talk about that in my book, that if you tell a story 3 or 4 times and you change a fact, by the 5th or 6th time, you're sitting there thinking, is this the real story or did I just make that up? Like you literally can't remember yourself. And with children, and another tough area we deal with a lot are molestation cases. Children can start to fabricate memories if they're not questioned correctly. And they can start to introduce information that the questioner is feeding them into their answers. And so, for example, you can convince a 4-year-old with just a few suggestions that you already took them to Disneyland if they want to go to Disneyland.
Oh, this is helpful.
Yeah, I don't know if you have young children or nephews or nieces, but all you got to do is say to like a 4-year-old, you say, yeah, I took you to Disneyland. Remember I bought you that red dress at Disneyland? And the child is confused because you bought them a red dress, but not at Disneyland. And then when they're sitting there trying to reconcile that, you say, remember I got you that cherry Coke at Disneyland? And you just keep combining true facts with a false memory of Disneyland. And after like 4 or 5 suggestions, they literally have a memory of going to Disneyland. And it's cheap. There's no lines to stand on. You don't have to fly anywhere.
It's a cheap way to fuck up your kids.
Yeah, my kids grew up basically in the Matrix. They're totally unsure of what their childhood is true or not.
I mean, because you're really only remembering the last time you remembered a situation.
Exactly.
In some respects.
And you can't, and sometimes you can't. What's really weird about social media now and the fact that people are constantly inundated with images, which is really a new phenomenon. I mean, it used to be, okay, you took some photos, you sent them to Rite Aid, you get them back in an envelope. But, now it's just thousands and thousands of images a day. It's hard to separate what you see through those images and what you see in real life. And you can't sort out those memories. It's just, our brain is not a recording device. It just picks up bits and pieces of information through our 5 senses and then stores them in different parts of our brain. And then our memories, when we're reconstructing those bits of information, and we often just reconstruct it incorrectly.
Yeah. So we are way more fallible than we'd like to think we are.
Yeah, I mean, identification evidence, jurors act like it's the greatest thing in the world, and it's pretty weak. And again, I'm saying not if you know the person. Like if you know the person and you're going in court and saying, yeah, that's my friend Bob who stole my car, sure. But when it's a crime situation, you've only seen that person during the crime. There's so many things that go wrong. I mean, another thing is we focus on what's most important to us. So if there's a weapon involved in a crime, we always focus on the weapon. And so we will not have a memory of the person's face, but we'll remember the weapon. Any type of stress distorts memory and makes it more difficult to retain a memory. So all these studies have now shown us that these identifications are extremely weak, and it's probably the leading cause of wrongful conviction in the United States is bad identification.
That is terrifying. So how much of your work is, let's say, helping to get someone released who is already in prison, and how much, if any, is like a post-sentence exoneration, like it's like they're just cleared of wrongdoing even if they've already served their sentence?
Well, there's only one client I've ever taken on who wasn't incarcerated because we just have so much work to do that we have to prioritize people who are incarcerated. And the only client was Brian Banks, who the movie was made about, that you can watch on Hulu tonight if you have Hulu. But in Brian's case, it just so saddened me because he was one of the best football players in the country. He was on his way to USC on a full scholarship. He gets this accusation against him, and no one does anything about it. And even when this woman's fully recanted, he still has this conviction hanging over his head, and that meant he'd be a lifetime sex offender. He'd have to be registering constantly. He had to wear an ankle monitor. And it just was so tragic to me that he said to me, look, I am still in prison and will always be in prison with this crime hanging over my head. So we took that case on. But in general, we do not represent people who are not incarcerated just because we have so much work to do.
Mm-hmm. I know like DNA evidence that is always evolving. Obviously, we have all this genealogy stuff that is really big right now since, the Golden State Killer and a lot of other high profile cases. Do you see a lot of that kind of forensic evidence sort of increasing in the work that you do?
Yeah, in some ways it's increasing, in other ways it's decreasing. So, for example, when DNA hit the scene in the mid-90s, it really changed everything. All of a sudden, we had this gold standard forensic technology that no one could debate. And before DNA, to be honest with you, a lot of people didn't believe there were any innocent people in prison. And I would have a lot of arguments with people about cases. And that's, by the way, again, one of the reasons I wrote this book is because 20 years ago, the argument was, are there any innocent people in prison? Now that we've documented more than 3,300 cases of wrongful conviction, the question is more to why? Why are innocent people in prison? And that's what I wanted to address in the book. But DNA initially, all the low-hanging fruit was dealt with. So, for example, old rape kits that were never tested and things like that were dealt with immediately. But now DNA has evolved in different ways. Like, for example, we now can do DNA testing without having the root of a hair because we can do mitochondrial DNA testing. And so that's allowed us to go back and look at old cases where they had hair samples but didn't have the roots of the hair. Like, let's say, hair on a victim's clothing from an attack. So there's new developments every year in science, and they always open up new avenues for us to review cases. And fortunately, in states like California, we now require the government to maintain the evidence while the person's incarcerated, which wasn't true when I started my project. Back then, most evidence was thrown out.
Oh my God, that's that's awful.
Oh, yeah. In 70% of the homicide cases and rape cases I looked at in the first few years, there was nothing I could do because the evidence was thrown out.
Wow.
So, the judge isn't going to let you out of prison when you're saying, I know if they had that rape kit, it would have tested and not been me. So you're out of luck when they've thrown the evidence out.
How much, in your opinion, because I don't know how provable this is, but how much does racism play a factor in wrongful convictions?
Well, that is chapter 10 of my book.
Perfect.
Number 10 reason you may end up in prison is you're poor and or a person of color. First of all, when people try to argue with me that the criminal legal system is not racist, you're basically saying society is not racist, because the criminal legal system is just a microcosm where people come from the community every day and go into buildings and make decisions. So they bring all their frailties, any racist tendency they have, all their biases come with them. And therefore, it's clear that that's going to impact the system. And if you take a 30,000-foot view and look at the statistics, it is readily apparent that race deeply impacts who gets convicted. There's studies that have been done using virtual reality where people have watched trials and the only thing they change is the race of the defendant, and we see widely different verdicts and sentences. And where we really see race impacting is race of the victim, because when the victim is a person of color, you see clearly less empathy by the majority of the population. And that is human nature, by the way. Now, we can do something about that by being aware of it. But when people wake up in the morning and they hear about an earthquake in India or somewhere they've never been, they're less concerned about it than if it's something they can relate to, than if it's the United States or in their state or somebody, or they went on vacation someplace once and now that's having an earthquake. Human beings only have a capacity to care about so much, and they care about what they relate to, and they have empathy for what they relate to. So when they look across the courtroom and they see a defendant who looks like their son and looks like their father, looks like their loved one, they're going to have more empathy for that person. And it's the same way when a victim is someone who looks like a family member. And all the studies confirm that. In fact, there's now a new phenomenon called white women syndrome, which is when a white woman is lost, it's always a news story. And if that white woman is found dead, it becomes a bigger news story. And now a spotlight will be on that case, and a prosecutor will step into that spotlight and say, I'm going to seek the death penalty. And then that case will get a lot more media attention, a lot more pressure to convict. And then in California, they'll probably name a law after the victim in that case. It'll be Mary's Law or Sandy's Law, because we have several laws literally named after white women who were murdered. And, I just think we need to be aware of these things and conscious of it, because bias exists, all this stuff exists. We can't pretend it doesn't. Otherwise, we're never going to make it better. But and in some ways, it's harder to battle, right? Because overt racism in the law, if you go back to the 1950s and earlier, in the 1960s as well, where literally you could look at the face of the law and say, this law is racist. That's hard to do now. Most laws aren't written to be racist. The problem is the application of them, and the inherent bias is much more difficult to deal with than explicit bias. So implicit is harder than explicit. And that's the challenge of this next generation, is to become more and more aware of that and figure out ways to remedy it. I talk in the book about, some people have suggested that you don't know the race of a defendant. You don't get to see the defendant. You don't know the race of a victim. You don't get to introduce evidence about the victim. But actually, what I've seen in my career is an increase in bringing in evidence about victims. And sometimes I get accused of being anti-victim, but I don't think, as a criminal defense attorney, on more than one occasion, I had to cross-examine the mother of a victim in a death penalty case. And to me, we should treat all human life the same. So we shouldn't be given the death penalty because a lot of people come into court and say, this guy was a wonderful guy. Because then when a homeless person gets murdered, nobody shows up. And now we're going to treat that crime differently. Yet a lot of people believe like victims should play more and more role in the criminal justice system. But that's the end result of it, is now we're not going to treat the crime the same regardless of who the human being is who's killed. So I think there's a real moral question to that. I've seen it firsthand. I've had to deal with it firsthand. And it's a horrible part of our system.
Yeah, it's especially tricky because there's no solid way to deal with that. I mean, that is the real question. Are there procedures that we can apply that diminishes this bias? But maybe the best answer is just recognizing that we have these bias and and trying to overcome it.
That's about it. I mean, I think when we're aware of our biases, we can try to manage them to a certain extent. But empathy is a very, very powerful thing. I mean, a lot of people have said, by the way, an interesting analogy to this is that women gained more from the civil rights movement than people of color. And the theory is women gained more because white males already loved women. It was just making the transfer to treating them better.
Yeah.
So, right. So it's like, they were like their mothers and their sisters and their daughters. And so there was much more empathy towards the plight of women, as opposed to empathy that was more difficult to drum up to people that you couldn't connect with at the same level. And there's just a real reality that human beings cannot survive if every moment of the day we were truly empathetic about every bad thing happening in the world. It would be unbearable for all of us.
It would be exhausting.
Exactly. So we focus on our family, on our community, on the things that we're super connected to, and that's what moves us to whatever it is, love, anger, hate. All our emotions are connected up with that because we can't connect our emotions to everything on the planet.
That's why one of my first questions was, how do you sleep at night?
And that's why my answer was, I don't.
So I have a kind of a silly question. It's obviously this is not actual legal advice, but do you have a personal opinion on Michael Peterson, the staircase guy?
No, I do not. I have not. You know what? I study no other cases but my own. I watch no crime anything. I've never seen CSI.
Gosh, why not?
When I go home, I watch HGTV. I like to watch a couple trying to pick out a countertop and, worrying about whether it's going to fit in the new house. That's the kind of mindless stuff that helps me to get some sleep at night.
That's what you deserve. That's exactly where you should be. So just to kind of close this out, what are some realistic, measurable goals that you have for the California Innocence Project?
When I started the project 24 years ago, I had 3 missions: get innocent people out of prison, train law students to be better lawyers at the same time by having them work on cases, and do legal reforms to improve the system. And that's what we've been doing for 24 years. As I said earlier, we've freed 40 innocent people. I've trained hundreds of law students in my clinic because they go out and investigate cases, work on the cases, learn how to be good lawyers. And we've had about a dozen laws in California that we've been a part of enacting to improve the justice system. So, keeping on doing that is what the future should be. There's still a lot more innocent people in prison. There's a lot more law students to train, and there's a lot more improvements we can make.
Oh, that's incredible. Well, it sounds like you're doing amazing work. One more time, your book is called, terrifyingly, You Might Go to Prison Even Though You're Innocent.
Yeah. And I actually put together a website around the book that has a lot of interesting videos and extra information called youmightgotoprison.com. So check that out.
I think your publisher made the right move by having you title the book what you did, because that is it's scary and it's attention grabbing.
I mean, it's so scary, by the way. I'll leave you with this thought. I literally have a plan for my first day in prison if it ever happens to me, because I know it can happen to anybody. And it's, I'm going to go out on the yard. I'm going to get together all the gang leaders, and I'm going to say, I'm going to be your lawyer and your lawyer and your lawyer and your lawyer. Now keep all these other dudes away from me. I'll be in the law library every day working to get you out of here.
So it's not start a fight with the biggest guy in prison.
No, I'm not going to take that strategy. That might be for other people. I'm a 57-year-old lawyer.
I'm glad you have a plan.
Thank you.
Well, Justin Brooks, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a really fascinating conversation. I am ordering your book, and thank you for chatting with us.
My pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you.
So, yeah, loved talking to Professor Brooks, and thank you, Professor Brooks, for doing all of your incredible work. I can't imagine how you sleep at night.
Seriously, thank you. Amazing.
Well, let's hear a quick word from our sponsors, and then I'm actually going to cover a case that our guest, Justin Brooks, was instrumental in.
I'm excited to hear your case.
Let's do it.
Knowledge is power, people. And when you know more, you can make better decisions for your body, for your health, for your future. And there aren't many decisions bigger than, I don't know, having a kid. Mm-hmm. But, you know, for many people, their fertility is a big old question mark. I don't know what's going on down there.
I didn't either. And that is why modern fertility was created. It's an easy and affordable way to test your fertility hormones at home with a simple finger prick. Mail it in with a prepaid label and you'll get your personalized results within 6 business days. Honestly, it could not be any easier. And also the finger prick is totally fine and not anything to be scared of. And it saves you a doctor's visit. It's the best. Plus, you'll get insight into your hormone levels, like your ovarian reserve, aka if you have more or fewer eggs than average depending on your age, and other important factors that can impact your fertility. The results go deep into what every hormone means, and you can also download the results to review with your doctor for next steps, which I love. So you can actually take your time to kind of process all of that information.
Right.
And traditional hormone testing at a fertility clinic can cost over $600.
Nope.
But modern fertility tests the same general set of hormones for only $179. I mean,
The savings.
a lot of savings. And if you go to modernfertility.com/gals, you can get $20 off your test. Plus, you can get reimbursed for the test through your FSA or HSA. So if you want kids today, or just maybe one day in the future, or you just want, you know, clinically sound info about your body.
Your body, yeah.
Modern Fertility can help you make the right decision for you.
Right now, Modern Fertility is offering our listeners $20 off the test when you go to modernfertility.com/gals. That means your test will cost just $159, which is a fraction of what it would cost at a fertility clinic. Get $20 off your fertility test when you go to modernfertility.com/gals. One more time, modernfertility.com/gals. And treat your knowledge.
Treat it.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about Marilyn Malero. And like I said, Justin Brooks was instrumental in clearing her name and getting her released from prison after being on death row for decades.
It's, yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's incredible. Whoa. We're going in the way back machine.
Mm-hmm.
May 12th, 1992, Chicago, just after midnight.
The late 1900s.
The late 19... Oh, my God. Yep. 2 members of the Latin Kings gang were shot and killed in a public bathroom in Humboldt Park, which right now has some stunningly beautifully renovated condos. Let me know if Humboldt Park is a good area.
It's
Chicago
hiring.
folks. Yeah, let me know. So the victims were 21-year-old Hector Reyes and 22-year-old Jimmy Cruz. Both were shot in the head at point blank range in the back of the head.
My God, like execution style?
Yes.
Jesus.
In a bathroom. In a public
Specific.
bathroom.
Oh, God.
A park public bathroom.
Mm-hmm. So the day after the double murder, a woman named Yvette Rodriguez, who was in jail facing a federal drug charge, and that charge would have been a parole violation for her, started talking to detectives Ernest Halverson and Ronaldo Guevara. Mm-hmm. There are going to be a lot of names in this case, and I'm going to do my best to help you keep track of them. Okay? So
Okay.
Yvette is in jail. She's talking to detectives Halverson and Guevara.
Where is the chart?
Yeah. It's in my brain, sadly.
Do you have a map?
I wish. Actually, I think I do.
Screenshot your brain.
There's definitely a map of Humboldt
damn
Park
it.
in Chicago on the drive.
You are so perfectly predictable.
Oh my God.
There it is. There's the goddamn map.
I like to situate.
There's the
I
fucking
know.
map.
Here it is. Fucking map. I think I, at this point, would be more concerned if you didn't upload a map.
Then it wouldn't be me.
Yeah.
You're having a stroke.
Body snatched.
Okay, so Yvette is in jail. She's facing these charges. She starts to talk to detectives. Yvette claims that a teenage girl named Jackie had bragged to her about having shot 2 Latin kings. It's unclear how Yvette, who was in jail when this crime took place, was in contact with this Jackie girl who was not in jail and supposedly committed this crime. We don't have an answer for that. Okay. So again, this is all hearsay that Yvette supposedly heard from Jackie. She says that Jackie was with 2 other women, Mary or Mari and Tootie, when it happened. Tootie, I know.
God, Tootie.
Like the fruity.
Oh.
The 3 women went to the park and started talking to Reyes and Cruz. Jackie then followed Reyes into the bathroom, shooting him in the back of the head.
Oh, God.
Why, you ask? Because of a gang rivalry, and we will get to it. Meanwhile, Mary was walking with Cruz, the other guy, in the park. And so Jackie then comes out of the bathroom and walks up behind these 2 and shoots Cruz in the head.
So the girls are with a different rival gang?
Yes.
Presumably? Okay.
Presumably, the 3 girls are with a rival gang and the 2 guys are with the Latin Kings. And we will get to it just in a moment.
Okay.
So Tootie was reportedly waiting in the car while all of this went down. So from Yvette's, albeit hearsay, jailhouse testimony, detectives sense that they have a shortcut to solving this thing. And they're like, okay, we know what happened.
Right.
Because this lady says so.
Yeah. We're just going to take it and close it because we don't want to do any other work.
Clearance, baby.
Yep. So investigators determined that the Jackie was 15-year-old Jacqueline Montañez. 15.
Poor thing.
Tootie was 16-year-old Madeline Mendoza. And Mary was 21-year-old Marilyn Mulero. And that's who we're going to focus on.
Got it.
Marilyn Mulero.
So it probably is Mary.
Probably Marilyn. Yeah. So according to the police, all 3 were female members of a gang called the Maniac Latin Disciples.
Whoa.
Okay.
Which had a big rivalry with, you guessed it, the Latin Kings. And just 1 week before the murders, a member of the Maniac Latin Disciples, a man named Ishmael Torres, was killed by the Latin Kings. So now the Animaniacs are out for revenge.
Animaniacs.
Oh, my God. Did you watch that show when you were a kid?
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Did not understand what was happening ever.
It's basically the origins of surrealist comedy, and I love it.
Yeah, it was supposed to be educational, but it just was not.
There was a water tower, right? Yeah.
Warner Brothers.
Yeah. Okay, so buckle up because the names are about to get even more confusing.
Okay.
A woman named Jackie Serrano, different Jackie.
Like the pepper.
Yes, like a Serrano pepper, and also like the name of my friend. Claimed that she and her aunt Marilyn, different Marilyn,
Oh, God.
Jesus Christ.
had witnessed the murders from her apartment window.
Okay.
So witness Jackie says that she looked out the window of her bathroom and saw 3 women in the park with 2 men. Then she saw one of the shorter women stand behind one of the men and heard a gunshot.
Okay.
So she basically is saying that she witnessed the Cruz shooting, which would have taken place right after the bathroom shooting.
Okay.
And Yvette, jailhouse snitch lady, adds to her story to police, saying that previously accused Jackie and accused Marilyn had asked her and her friend, a woman named Rhonda Riley, to come with them to, quote, go kill some Latin kings. So Rhonda backs us up and she picks Jackie and Marilyn out in a lineup, which was kind of like the final nail in the coffin. Also, in return for her statement, Yvette's drug charges were conveniently dismissed.
Okay. Believe
Which-
everything she says.
Yep. And then thereby she avoided a federal parole violation.
Oh my God.
They're kind of big charges to get dismissed.
Yeah.
So all of this is working out very neatly for the cops. Case closed.
Right.
They charge all three women, so Jackie Montañez, Marilyn Malero, and even little Madeline Tootie Mendoza
Oh.
with first-degree murder.
The 16-year-old? The 15
there's-
and 16?
Both of them and Marilyn, who is older. Marilyn's 21.
Oh, for God's sakes.
So the next day, Detectives Guevara and Halverson, remember these two asshats, arrest Marilyn and Jackie at their gang member's funeral, Ishmael Torres's funeral. The detectives immediately accuse them of luring the Latin Kings guys, Cruz and Reyes, to the park and killing them as retaliation for Torres's murder.
Okay.
According to Marilyn, they were never read their Miranda rights. And when the girls refused to speak to the cops, the detectives took them while they were in their custody to Humboldt Park, the scene of the crime,
God.
and also like a known hangout spot for their rival gang, the Latin Kings.
Oh my God.
And then the detectives walked the girls up to a group of known Latin King gang members who were in the park and said, quote, "These are the two who killed your homeboys."
What?
Oh my God.
You may as well just sentence them to death at that point.
Jesus.
And they're fucking children.
Jackie is 15.
I can't.
So obviously this made things very fucking dangerous for Marilyn and Jackie, and I don't really know where Tootie is right now. She's a little hard to track down.
Oh, Tootie.
So Tootie. Tuna. Remember Tuna?
I'll never forget. Hashtag never forget.
Oh, that was a great app. Okay. So after this little life-threatening jaunt in the park, the detectives brought Jackie Montañez and Marilyn Malero back to the station and interrogated them for 9 hours.
Jesus.
According to Marilyn, they still weren't Mirandized, and she was denied sleep as well as access to legal counsel throughout her interrogation. The detectives lied, telling her at one point that Jackie had just confessed in the other room and implicated her in both murders. So now she thinks that she's getting pinned for everything.
Which is
Classic.
like that's a common tactic.
Yes.
I think it's
it needs to-
illegal.
I don't think it is. I don't think it's illegal to.
I don't think it's illegal either.
Yeah.
Well, a lot
but
of
I-
what they're doing is illegal. I do think
1,000%.
I do think that is illegal, but like what's stopping them with all the
I
other
don't think
bullshit?
it is. I think we've talked about in our interrogations episode about how like lying to the perp is not actually illegal.
Yeah, I don't think that is illegal to say like we've got so and so and they just confessed and said that
right.
you did
Or
it.
we already know what you did, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like we have evidence. Like they've said shit like that before a million times.
So they basically told Marilyn that she had the choice between confessing to one of the murders or getting the blame for both because
Yep.
Jackie was talking.
So what the fuck else is she going to do? She's a baby.
She's
She's
21.
a terrified baby. Well, yeah. Okay. She's still a terrified
No,
baby.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
And then they also basically said, like, imply that she would automatically get the death penalty if, she was blamed for both.
Because that's how that works.
So they kind of tried to imply that, like, she could avoid the death penalty if she admitted to one of the murders.
Some states have outlawed police lying to minors,
Okay.
but not all states, and it is legal in all 50 states.
For adults, for sure.
So I think part of why they focused on Marilyn is because she was the only one over the age of 18.
They could also get her in jail for way longer.
Exactly.
That's
Not
so
that
fucked up.
Jackie and Tootie got off lightly, and we're about to get to it, but
No.
it does feel like they zeroed in on Marilyn because she was older. The detectives also made threats, including having her children, who were toddlers at the time, taken away from her.
Oh my God.
And so, believing that Jackie had implicated her in both murders and that she would never see her kids again, / would definitely get the death penalty if she didn't quote unquote confess to one of the killings, Marilyn Malero finally agreed to sign a prepared statement that was written by the cops. Ugh. This quote unquote confession stated that she was the shooter for Jimmy Cruz and that she was part of the conspiracy for the Reyes shooting. Jackie Montañez, who was 15, was sentenced to life in prison without parole. On September 22nd, 1993, Madeline Tootie Mendoza pled guilty to murder and was sentenced to 35 years in prison. She was 16 at the time of the crime.
The 15-year-old got life?
The 15-year-old got life without parole, and the 16-year-old got 35 years.
Jesus.
And
so
even
fucking
according
sad.
to these supposed witnesses and statements and confessions, Tootie was waiting in the car,
Oh my God.
but she got 35 years. But the harshest sentence was actually still reserved for Marilyn, despite her signed quote-unquote confession. The prosecutor was still seeking the death penalty in her case. Marilyn's family hired an attorney named Jeremiah Lynch.
Lynch.
I'm sure they were trying to make sure that she had better representation. Like, I'm sure they... Like, it's not, she could have been given a random public defender. She might have been better off with a random public defender. But they were trying, so they hired this attorney. He fucking sucked.
Oh dear.
Lynch had never handled a death penalty case before, nor would he ever again. And we will
Great.
get to it. He basically didn't bother to investigate at all. And he only met with Malero, his fucking client, 3 times.
What?
Oh my God.
How the fuck?
It's a
He's
death
busy.
penalty case.
Oh,
Jesus.
that's so egregious.
And he was a hired attorney. He wasn't just a public defender.
Right.
Oh, that's sick.
Against the advice of pretty much all other defense attorneys, 5 days after Tootie's guilty plea, Lynch convinced his client, Marilyn, to plead guilty to first-degree murder. Like, without a plea deal, just plead guilty in a death penalty case.
What on earth?
Not to avoid the death penalty. Like, you don't get the deal.
What the
But
What
just-
would be the point? What? I don't.
Just in the hopes that the jury doesn't pass the death sentence, just like out of the kindness of their hearts.
Just go limp. Let it happen.
Yeah.
That's so insane.
She's 21.
And if you couldn't already tell how checked out this man was, Lynch not only withdrew then completely from the case after Marilyn agreed to this, he also quit practicing law altogether and joined the fucking priesthood.
The circus.
The priesthood?
Ew.
Yeah.
Oh.
He just was
No.
like, maybe the law isn't for me.
For me. Bye.
Oh my God.
That's that was a choice.
You're letting someone die, like actively. Oh my God.
So because she pled guilty, there's no trial.
Yeah.
There's still a sentencing hearing, though, with witnesses testifying before the sentencing jury.
Sure.
And so they're basically there just to rule on whether or not she gets sentenced to the death penalty or life in prison or, possibility of parole or whatever.
I could. No, I can't. Ugh.
So there are still like witnesses for the prosecution and the defense, but like the best she can really hope for is life in prison. At the sentencing hearing, another jailhouse informant, a woman named Joan Roberts, testified for the prosecution. She said that she was in the Cook County Jail with all 3 of the women and that they'd confirmed that both Marilyn and Jackie had shot their victims in the back of the head. So she said, like, I overheard them and they
What did
said,
they offer her to say that? Jailhouse informants are not reliable.
Joan also claimed that Marilyn was fucking furious at Jackie for having talked to the police and was trying to take her out in prison or like hire a hit on Jackie.
Cool.
But in exchange for this testimony, Joan Roberts was released from jail and placed on electronic monitoring. And somehow her armed robbery charges were reduced to misdemeanors. and she was given probation.
Who makes these decisions?
I don't know.
It's just like
the DA. I don't know.
if the
Like just the administrative nebula.
it's just so impossible to get a solid information in a system that is so fucked
Corrupt.
and so corrupt, and also like, of course, any inmate that's living in those kinds of conditions would at least consider the idea of turning informant at the chance of a better situation.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you? I would.
I absolutely would.
Bye.
Absolutely, I would.
Yeah.
It's just like you can't make the pot too sweet, you know?
God.
I feel so sick over it. I hate it.
Another Detective Anthony Riccio, accused Marilyn of flashing gang signs after confessing to the murder. Like, they were just trying to make her seem like this, like, horrible
Hardcore.
gang,
Cold-blooded.
Right. And prosecutors managed to suppress the part of her quote-unquote confession where she mentioned how the detectives had threatened her.
Yeah.
So they were like, oh, don't say that part.
Uh-huh.
So they literally, like, line edited
Oh, the mic cut out.
her confession,
Yeah.
where I'm sure she was like, well, they said if I don't want to die.
Yeah.
I want to be able to see my kids again someday.
Oh, God. It's so
So-
tragic at every point.
But there were also character witnesses for Marilyn's side at the hearing. Joseph Whittington was a teacher in the jail education program who testified that Malero was a shy and quiet person who liked to write poetry. And Gloria Brookins was a social worker and counselor who testified that Malero helped her often with other women in the program and that she didn't engage in gang-related behavior.
Right.
But the jury had already made their decision. They recommended the death penalty. And on November 12th, 1993, Judge John Mannion formally sentenced Marilyn Malero to death.
Because they made a decision that was handed to them, manipulated on a silver platter.
Yeah.
It's just so fucking sad.
She was the first woman to be sentenced to death in Illinois.
Wow.
Why start now? Jesus.
Justin Brooks was a law professor.
Sure
at the
was.
Thomas.
Ever heard of him?
At the Thomas M. Cooley Law School at Western Michigan University at the time. When he read about how Malero was sentenced to death as part of a plea bargain,
That's completely apeshit.
God,
I
that
can't
is
even wrap
so
my head around that.
crazy.
he was shocked, quote, shocked that she could be sentenced to death without a trial, end quote.
Yeah.
By a
That
priest.
should never be allowed to happen, ever.
And then when Professor Brooks met with Malero in prison, she turned the tables even more and insisted that she was innocent. Like,
Not even fucking do it.
Yeah, like, not only is this like a procedural fucking nightmare, but
Yeah.
also I didn't do it. It was a coerced confession to begin with. So Marilyn must have made a really big impression on Brooks because he soon recruited 4 students from his criminal law class to help investigate her case.
Including Elle Woods.
Basically, that's what I'm picturing.
If only.
So with Brooks and Elle Woods' help, Malero filed to withdraw her plea and vacate her death sentence. This was denied, but then they appealed. And in May 1997, the Illinois Supreme Court vacated the death sentence.
So she'd already been in prison for 3 or 4 years at that point?
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 years
On death row, right?
on death row.
Yeah.
For 93. Yeah. Oh, God.
Poor fucking thing.
So the court held that the cross-examination of Malero was improper. And this was cross-examination at the sentencing hearing, which was basically like this mini trial, basically.
And it was the only time she ever even saw a courtroom.
Yeah. So during this cross-examination, the prosecution had used the fact that she tried to take back her coerced confession as, quote, proof that she didn't show any remorse.
Oh, come on.
Get
they-
you.
So they tried to
Get
be
bent.
like, and she tried to take back her confession, so she's just remorseless, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, sentence her to death.
Give it
Okay.
a rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The no remorse thing, really bothers me.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you supposed to do if you are innocent? Like,
Right. If advocating for yourself
damned
just
if you do,
translates
damned if you
to
don't.
you have no remorse.
Yeah.
No remorse
fucked up.
is like those guys who like kill children and then like talk back to the family members in the
Fucking,
courtroom. Like
Jeffrey
that's-
Dahmer. Okay, no remorse. That applies, but
I don't
not to
think-
this fucking woman.
I don't think proclaiming your own innocence should ever be seen as showing no remorse. I think
Yeah.
the only thing that could constitute showing no remorse is if you're like, yeah, I did it and I do it again.
Yeah.
And I'll
There's-
kill this person
there's
too.
nothing to feel remorse over if you are innocent.
Right.
Of course, I'm not showing remorse. I didn't fucking do it.
Right. Exactly. But that's not how our system works. So, based on this ruling, Brooks was able to take Malero's case in front of a new sentencing jury, and they declined to impose the death sentence. But she is still considered guilty. She's just now sentenced to life without parole,
But at least taken off of death row.
at least taken off of death row. Although later
Step
in
one.
interviews, she was like obviously this was it's good that I was taken off of death row, but my time in prison at that point got a lot harder because
Oh, sure. You're back with everybody.
you're back in Gen Pop
yeah.
and
You're
you
at
know,
high risk
yeah.
of violence. You're just trying to
And
survive
you have
in there.
the rest of your life to go.
Yep.
Yeah. And she was like, that's when people were like, people were fighting and
Uh-huh.
it was really hectic. And whereas when she was on death row, there are like fewer people to worry about and it's like physically actually a lot safer.
Right.
Yeah.
Shit.
But Justin Brooks didn't stop there. He
Go, Justin,
moved,
go.
Go, Justin, go. He moved to Southern California around this time, and in 1999, he founded the California Innocence Project.
Ever heard of it?
So this was like pre his
Yeah.
work with the Innocence
Official.
Project, but it was like the case that like got him into innocence cases, I guess.
That's crazy.
He then continued to work on Malero's case for the next 20 years.
What?
Wow.
Filing motions and appeals in state court, then federal, and then the case was eventually denied review by the U.S. Supreme Court, but
That
it didn't
almost always
matter
happens. Yeah.
because over time, evidence against Malero began to fall apart.
Oh, we've got advanced DNA testing technology, baby.
That did not play a role in this case.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
As she
Oops.
has previously stated.
I forgot that you already said that.
But other things did. And we will get to them.
Okay.
So investigators actually started to investigate the witness statements
Wait, what?
and see if they could be corroborated by, facts
Anyone?
and evidence.
What a unique method.
So
Groundbreaking.
so investigators went
All
to
modern.
went to the apartments where the witnesses, Jackie and Marilyn, the Serrano Peppers,
Yep.
claimed that they had seen the shooting from that apartment. And they determined that the bathroom in the park and the area around it were not at all visible from these apartments.
Oh my God.
20 fucking 5 years later.
10 seconds of detective work?
Oh my God.
I can't.
Couldn't
can't.
see from there.
Or the cops just couldn't be
Jesus.
bothered to go, I don't know, check.
Well, why would they? Because this was testimony that they wanted.
Right.
They concocted this. They found someone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then in 2017, Jackie Montañez admitted in an affidavit, and she had also verbally said this many times, but it took a fucking affidavit, that she was alone and had planned the shooting. She admitted shooting both men by herself and said that Marilyn was not aware of her plan ahead of time.
Wow.
So Jackie did do it.
Jackie did do it. And I do think that all three women were involved in the Animaniacs, but I don't know that for sure. Jackie was furious that her co-gang member, Ishmael Torres, was gunned down by the Latin Kings. Ishmael Torres was deaf, and so she just felt like it was a particularly egregious move by this rival gang to kill a deaf guy.
Right.
And so she promised Horace's mother that she would get revenge for him. She said that she shot Reyes in the park bathroom, and then when she was coming out, she was afraid that Cruz was going to hurt Tootie because, like, he had obviously heard the gunshot. And so she shot him as well. Part of what spurred Jackie's confession 24 years after the fact was that she was eligible for release in 2023.
Oh my God. But Marilyn wasn't.
Yeah.
So even though, okay, so she confessed. That's
And
a
was
double,
put away
it's a
for her
it's a
involvement in
double
this.
jeopardy situation.
She didn't think it was fair for her to possibly be released while Marilyn, serving a life sentence, would die in prison despite having not killed anyone.
Yeah. Well, she's right about that. It's not fucking fair.
And then the other dominoes began to fall. Joan Roberts said that her testimony, and this was the testimony that she claimed that Marilyn had put a hit out on Jackie while in jail and was like bragging about the killing and stuff. Joan was like, no, that was totally false. Detective Halverson had
I just want it out.
Not only did she want out, but Detective Halverson threatened to send gang members after her family if she didn't testify for him.
Oh my God.
Oh
the
my
cops are the
God.
biggest gang in this entire story.
Yeah.
Rhonda Riley also rescinded her testimony. And we now know that Detectives Guevara and Halverson were notorious for fabricating evidence, obtaining false witness statements, and coercing false confessions.
I don't even want to know how many fucking cases they have fucked.
Too fucking bad because you're about to.
Oh, God damn it.
no.
Yes, they'd put Marilyn Malero on death row, but she was far from their only victim. 31 wrongful convictions tied to
Oh my
Detective
God.
Guevara have been overturned since 2016.
And those are just the ones that have been successfully overturned. There could be way more.
Including another death row exoneree, Gabrielle Solace.
Oh
Jesus.
my God.
The
Guevara.
second woman sentenced to death in Illinois.
Or maybe it's, sorry, I said Gabrielle.
probably
It's probably
Gabriel.
Gabriel.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I get that name confused. Gabriel Solace.
Jesus.
Guevara has been accused of framing defendants for murder in more than 50 cases.
Holy shit.
Both Guevara and Halverson have been accused of beating, threatening, and coercing suspects to obtain false confessions, as well as a history of denying legal counsel to suspects in custody,
Good.
which
Great.
they did to Marilyn
Cool.
and Jackie. They were part of a group called the Burge Squad,
Ugh, gross.
which operated under the Chicago Police Commander John Burge.
Hate
and
it.
this group systematically tortured or coerced innocent suspects into confessing to murders that they did not commit.
Wow.
Jesus.
Wow.
Cook County has had 15 death row exonerations that were directly related to endemic police corruption.
Fucking Christ.
I just watched a documentary about something similar in Baltimore. Like a bunch of cops were, they acted together to steal drugs from like drug dealers and then sell it and then like put other people in jail. Like there were so many completely innocent people who went to jail while these cops got super duper rich off of stealing and selling drugs.
You sure you were watching a documentary or were you watching The Place Beyond the Pines with Ryan Gosling?
I
And-
love that movie.
What's her name? Something Mendez. Super hot.
Yes.
Eva Mendes?
Ava Mendes. Yes.
Are they married?
Something.
Isn't that where they met?
Yeah, I
think
think so.
Yeah.
Great film.
Very good.
So yeah, we don't know how many more innocent people are in jail because of them, because of
Yeah.
these two detectives or because of the whole fucking squad, the whole
Burge
county,
Squad.
everybody.
Squad.
So in 2019, the California Innocence Project, in collaboration with the Exoneration Project and the Illinois Innocence Project, filed a new clemency petition on Maryland's behalf. So I think the only reason California was involved was because Justin Brooks
Had gone out there.
because really this is an Illinois case.
I think they just they can share resources and
It's,
stuff
yeah,
like
the
that
network
too.
definitely does.
Yeah. So on April 6th, 2020, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker granted Marilyn Malero clemency. She was released from prison 2 days later.
God, I bet that felt so good.
Marilyn had spent a total of 28 years in prison, 5 of those on death row before she was released. Later at a press conference, she said, quote, "I had to be a strong individual because I had 2 toddlers when I was incarcerated. I had to fight for them. I had to be strong for them." Can't imagine just being like ripped from your children.
No.
And then they're like 30 when you get out.
Yeah.
They're
You
full
miss
ass
everything.
adults.
You miss everything.
They probably have their
And they
own
have all
kids.
kinds of feelings. I mean, she said that she's working on like rebuilding those relationships, but you know, they didn't necessarily know that she was innocent that whole time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were just whatever the people who were raising them was telling them is probably what their reality was at that time.
Right.
And like the world at large.
Exactly.
So she was finally reunited with her family in her 50s. She was 21 when she was convicted.
Oh my God, that breaks my fucking heart.
What a life wasted.
Yep. She went back to school to become a barber, and she also applied for the Illinois Prison Project to become an ambassador for change in the prison system. And she is an advocate for women in prison still to this day. Quote, "There's other women out there that are incarcerated, that are innocent, that I will keep fighting for, just like our other Guevara victims that are in there."
Dang.
Yeah.
That's so fucking sad.
I'm so glad she got out. Really cool that she's like giving back too, now that she's out.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not that she fucking owes anybody shit. She wanted to go on an island and just drink fucking martinis the rest of her life. Couldn't blame her for that. But it takes a very special kind of person to be mistreated by the justice system your entire life, essentially, and then willingly go back in to help others. It's really incredible.
Yep.
Ugh, wow.
There's a photo of this Detective Guevara on the drive, too. That'll be on the blog.
God.
Ew. I don't even want to look at it. Yeah. I mean, I will, but ew.
Ew.
Yuck.
And like we've said it before, but like you're not only ruining these innocent people's lives and their families' lives or whatever, but you're also like not getting justice for the victims.
Anyone. But it's never been about justice. It's just been about their own clearance rates. They don't give a shit about actual justice. That's not why they're there. You know,
She's
they're
so
there
cute looking.
to swing their dicks and fucking join the Bulge Club, or whatever the fuck it's called.
Look at this picture of her with her big hair and her blue eyeshadow.
fucking
She's so
cute.
cute.
I know.
Ugh, well done.
Yeah, well done to Justin Brooks, man, and to Marilyn. I mean, like, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, should we take a quick break and then hear another really sad story?
Yeah.
Great. Let's do it. This case is pretty famous. I actually think that I've like mentioned it before, but I haven't covered the whole case, so this was my opportunity.
Okay.
It also just has every glaring issue with the justice system. You got your racism, you got your coerced confessions, you got your shit police work, you got your bullshit forensics, you got your jailhouse informants. You know the drill. This case is everything.
Yeah.
Yep. Runs the gamut. So on the evening of May 18th, 1978, 28-year-old Lawrence Lionberg was working a slow summer night shift at a Chicago suburb gas station in Homewood, Illinois. His fiancée, 23-year-old Carol Schmall, decided to go hang out at the gas station to keep her fiancé company. It was very late when a car with 4 men pulled into the station and the 4 men got out. They entered the shop and abducted Lawrence and Carol at gunpoint, drove them to an abandoned home in an underserved Chicago community. And while there, Lawrence and Carol were beaten, Carol was raped, and both of them were shot to death and left in this abandoned house.
That is a horrific and senseless crime.
Correct.
Okay.
Their bodies were found the following morning by neighborhood children who like play in the house.
Oh, dear God. Okay.
Yeah. Really fucking horrific right off the bat. The violent murder of a young white couple was headline gold, and every paper was running the story. Rewards for information were being offered, and calls started rolling into the police station. 4 men were arrested based on eyewitness claims that they were seen near the gas station in the Fort Heights area of Chicago within the timeline of events on that night in question.
So you said that racism plays a role. Were the victims white?
The victims were white, and the men implicated were all young black men.
Okay.
Who had just been seen near the gas station.
Well, allegedly seen near the gas station.
Allegedly seen near the gas station.
That's
Dennis
enough for
Williams.
Yeah.
Seriously. Dennis Williams, Kenneth Adams, Vernil Jimerson, and Willie Range, 4 young black men who seemed to the police like the perfect suspects to commit a crime in a majority white suburb, were arrested.
Yeah, what are they doing here?
A young black girl named Paula Gray was also picked up with these 4 men for being involved in this crime. She was only 17, she was mentally disabled, and was questioned by police without any family or an advocate present. They held her in a nearby motel, questioning her ad nauseum for 2 straight days, so probably depriving her of sleep.
A fucking motel? That is
Yep.
sick.
Yep.
And terrifying.
Horrific. Before she, quote unquote, confessed to being involved in this crime and confirmed that Dennis, Kenneth, Vernil, and Willie were the main perpetrators.
Yeah, she was terrified. She needed to get out of there. She didn't know what the fuck she was saying. Oh, my God.
Then she was taken before a grand jury where she testified that she had been present and saw the men repeatedly rape Miss Schmall and then shoot both victims to death. From Northwestern Law, quote, Gray soon recanted her confession, which contained only 2 purported facts that were not known to police, and both of those assertions ultimately were shown to have been false.
Oh my God. And she's a minor.
And she's disabled.
Yeah.
Like, she is intellectually disabled. She does not...
Jesus.
She's a minor, but she was operating, like, I think she was reading at, like, a 3rd grade level.
Yeah.
Like, she just was not... She didn't have the capacity
To engage like this.
especially under duress. I mean, it's just fucking
In
heartbreaking.
a motel for 2
Yes.
days.
She was
without
essentially kidnapped.
representation. That's illegal.
Yeah.
And not
They
only
don't give
are
a fuck.
they...
She's a young, disabled black girl.
Yeah. And not only are they coercing her and terrorizing her, but they're also now planting really horrific, like...
False memories
false
into her
memory.
mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're psychologically abusing her in every possible way.
Yeah. Didn't you see this guy do X, Y, and Z to this woman?
Yeah.
Yep.
God.
Yep. And then when she recanted, she was charged with the rape and murders and perjury.
Cool.
What?
She was, yep.
That's like the other version of showing no remorse.
No remorse. Oh, you're going to take it back? Well, then now
perjury.
you're
And
on the
wasting
hook
police
because you were
time.
there and you lied, so you get a perjury charge. So, sorry. When you confessed, we were going to leave you be, but now you were there, so you're an accessory and you lied, so perjury. Bye.
Great.
She was tried simultaneously with Adams, Range, and Williams in the same courtroom before the same judge, but by a separate jury. The charges against Jimerson could not be pursued at that time because without Gray's testimony that she had recanted, there was no evidence at all against him. The man who had called in to report these folks to police was a guy named Charles McCraney. I'm really not sure what his race is.
He sounds like a crank.
He does. He's Charles McCranky. And that's not super relevant in the rest of the context of this story, but like it could very easily have been a crotchety old white guy calling in 4 young black men and, and saying, oh, I saw these guys
Near the gas
sniffing
station.
around the gas station. That, now I want to be very clear. I am speculating because I truly do not know, but I could see that being the case. So this witness had not placed Jimerson at the scene. So without, her, Paula Gray, saying, oh, yeah, he was there, there's no one putting him there. So he's now not part of this.
Every time you say Paula Gray, I think about Polly Gray from Peaky Blinders, but continue.
Oh, my God, I didn't know where you were going with that. So shocking.
Polly
So-
Gray.
I think of Paula Dean.
Paula Dean. Y'all. So the prosecution presented some very loose forensic evidence, bringing forth an expert forensic witness named Michael Podlecki, who testified that at least one of the rapists was type A secretor blood, which is shared by 25% of the population, and alleged that Williams and Adams had type A secretor blood. though an independent forensic witness forensic panel retested this evidence years later in 1987 and concluded that Williams and Adams actually had non-secretor blood.
Oh, great.
They didn't even have
The right type of blood.
They had the right type. They were type A, but they didn't have the other incredibly important characteristic that would have matched their blood to this crime scene.
Aren't the non-secretors pretty rare?
I think so. Well, I don't know. The secretors, type A secretor is 25% of the population. I don't know how rare that is. I don't know how rare the non-secretors are.
I think the non-secretors are pretty rare.
Well, they're 20% of the population are non-secretors. So it's actually a coincidence that 2 of them were non-secretors.
Well, there you go. Podlecki also claimed that hairs from the back of Williams' car were consistent with Larry Lionberg and Miss Schmall, but these hairs either couldn't be properly DNA tested or didn't contain the bulb where the DNA lives. They were just like shed that didn't have the bulb on it.
Yeah.
So this was simply a comparison test and comparison testimony, not actual DNA evidence.
Which is absolutely useless for hair.
Completely useless.
Like you can be like, well, this one looks long and that one looks short.
Yeah,
but like that's not.
It means nothing.
Scientific.
There was no other physical or forensic evidence to match the suspects to this crime. They were completely put away on
One
testimony,
eyewitness.
an eyewitness, and 2 bullshit, quote unquote, DNA samples.
God, and they're just a handful of random guys out
That
of the
actually,
universe.
if done properly, would have ruled them out.
Completely out. Completely out. After the men were arrested, a fellow inmate named David Jackson came forward as a jailhouse informant and testified that he had overheard Williams and Range in jail discussing the murder and rape.
Maybe they were, because that's why they were in prison.
Well, Jackson later admitted that he fabricated this evidence because he was offered a deal by the authorities to be a jailhouse informant.
Jesus fuck.
The prosecution also eliminated all black jurors from the trial.
Cool.
All of the defendants were black and the murder victims were white, and they were tried by an entirely white jury.
Oh my God.
What
Did
year
it take
is this?
4 minutes? The 70s?
The late 70s, early 80s. I think it took place in 1978,
Wow.
but the trial went into the early 80s.
Yep.
Not like that would have made much of a difference now, but still, it's like, it's fucking
They would
bad.
have at least tried to hide it a little more now. I
Exactly. They probably wouldn't get away with having an all-white jury now.
Right.
I'd hope.
Well, I
Maybe
don't
I'm
know-
just clinging to
I don't know
false
why
hope.
the defense attorneys would continue to rule out black jurors.
I just don't think they gave a shit anymore.
There's only so much the defense can do. The defense can't unilaterally rule someone in,
Right, right.
and they only get so many like vetoes.
They take turns picking.
Right.
So if they were considering race as they should have been, which they probably weren't at this
I think
time.
they just weren't. Yeah.
Yeah. There was, that's really sick.
The prosecution also suppressed evidence from an eyewitness who was actually by the abandoned house where the murders took place that very night. A man named Marvin Simpson reported hearing several gunshots and seeing 4 men run from the house. So no Paula Gray. The men he saw were identified as Arthur Robinson, Juan Rodriguez, and Ira and Dennis Johnson, who are brothers. I saw this reported 2 different ways. One, that the police had this information and did not provide it to anyone for trial, so the prosecution may not have known it existed.
Or the defense.
And one that the prosecution did know and didn't present it at trial. Either way, it's fucking egregious. It doesn't matter. It was suppressed evidence.
Because they thought they were already farther with these other 4 guys.
Yeah, they didn't want to
Probably,
muddy
yeah.
the waters.
So Northwestern law states, quote, as a result of police and prosecutorial misconduct, however, the report had not been turned over to the defense prior to trial as required by Brady versus Maryland.
Yeah, exactly. It's
a Brady violation, bitch.
Oh my God.
Brady versus Maryland.
It's Brady versus Maryland.
They
Coming
made
at you
love.
live. They made love. So the defense also called several friends and family members of these 4 young men who were on trial who had been called in the media the Ford Heights 4 to testify, all providing alibis for these men for the night in question.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Like, what else could they possibly have done to prove their innocence?
They couldn't It was a David and Goliath situation, but they just had no way. They had no way. But Paula Gray's coached testimony had sealed the deal. She took the stand and said she was there and that she'd seen them do it. And even though she actually withdrew her testimony and was subsequently charged with murder and perjury, it was already too late. Like, we forget that the jury are still humans.
Yeah.
You can
they've
strike all
already
that
heard
stuff
it.
from the record, but they've already heard it.
Right.
And now she's coming back and saying, oh, no, that's not actually right.
Yeah. Delete
But
data.
It just doesn't,
Right.
it doesn't work that way. So Williams was sentenced to death, while Adams was sentenced to 75 years. Range was sentenced to life, and Paula Gray was sentenced to 50 years, all in 1978. Again, Jimerson could not be charged, as Charles McCraney had not mentioned Jimerson in his testimony, and Paula Gray had withdrawn her testimony, so they just had nothing. There's no forensic evidence against him, so they had nothing to bring him to trial with. As for the Ford Heights Four, the Supreme Court of Illinois reversed the convictions of Williams and Range on appeal in 1982 because the defendant's lawyer was deemed incompetent and was the subject of a legal disciplinary hearing.
Did he join
So-
the priesthood?
That also probably helps answer your question about jury selection, the Brady violation. I mean, the Brady violation is on the prosecution, but still, like, this fucking guy didn't do his fucking job. He came under scrutiny, and they looked into his past cases, and he happened to be their lawyer. He was deemed incompetent, and they had their convictions reversed. At that time, prosecutors offered Paula Gray a deal to get out of jail if she testified that she had seen Jimerson, Williams, and Range shoot the victims and rape Schmall, and she accepted.
Yeah, because
She's been sitting in jail for a fucking decade.
If you say this,
Yeah,
my
we'll
God.
let you go. Not quite a decade, but still. So in 1985, that eyewitness, Charles McCraney, had changed his evidence to include seeing Jimerson.
Oh, this poor man.
I don't think he's so poor a man. I think that they approached him and they were like, are you sure you didn't
No,
see
I
him?
meant Jimerson.
Oh, Jimerson. Yes. Sorry, I thought you were talking about Charles McCraney.
He
It's
hasn't
like, fuck
even,
that guy.
like, he wasn't charged
No,
in the
he wasn't
first
even there.
round, and now people are coming back and amending all their shit.
I know. And Jimerson was sentenced to death.
Oh,
So Charles McCraney, that witness, was likely approached by the prosecution with a tantalizing offer to submit fresh testimony because they were getting a new trial because those convictions were reversed.
but McCraney wasn't in jail. What could they have been offering McCraney?
I don't know if he's just some fucking
Lunch?
Yeah, poor dude living in a suburb of Chicago. God only knows.
I think maybe it means that Jimerson was approached with an offer and he's turned it down, and so then they.
No. I
Jimerson
know
was
when I
out.
wrote this. It wasn't Jimerson who was given an offer. It was Charles, the witness, who had his wheel greased to submit new testimony that includes
You'd really
seeing
be
Jimerson.
helping us out. Mm-hmm. You'd be making the streets safer.
Right.
Wow.
God.
Well, and don't fucking tell me that cops don't give bribes to people like this.
Oh,
I mean, they probably offered him cash. Again, speculation, but like that's not out of the realm of possibility.
Just to get a specific guy off the
yep.
streets. That is so.
Well, not even off the streets, because that implies that he's dangerous being on the streets. Just put away for no fucking reason.
Yeah, 10 years after the fact.
capturing this man.
So in 1987, Williams was sentenced to death, ranged to life at retrial. Paula Gray was released from prison in 1987 as per the deal she struck with the prosecution. And I think Jimerson still like evaded this whole thing because it's like, bro, even if this guy says he saw me, you still do not have enough evidence to put me in prison. So, like, fortunately, that poor bastard was brought back into the fold again. But once again, there was not sufficient, evidence to go after him.
So, like, the two that had the bad lawyer and got out, they're just back in with
back
actually
in.
the same sentences.
Yep, they're back in.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the late mid-90s when 3 female journalism students stumbled upon this case and dove into it further that the Marvin Simpson witness statement, where he's like, I saw these other guys. I was right by this house.
Yeah.
I heard the gunshots.
I know exactly who these 4 guys were.
Yeah.
Yep. I think they are part of that like Innocence Network, and they discovered that witness statement and brought it fully to light and realized this was never in court. So, believing this to be the break in the case that they needed, the students rallied together to have the DNA retested in a private lab through the Innocence Project. The results showed that Jimerson, Williams, Adams, and Range, the Fort Heights Four, were all innocent. Like, none of their DNA matched any of the forensic evidence that was collected at the scene. Not a bit of it.
Yeah. Funny that.
Yeah. Interesting. That's different.
I wonder if it matches Ira and what's his nuts.
Well, funny you should say that, because this also paved the way to using the same DNA testing to confirm that Robinson, Rodriguez, Ira, and Dennis Johnson were indeed guilty.
Oh my God.
Upon questioning, 3 of them confessed Dennis Johnson had died before he could even be brought to justice for this crime.
So if they had just gone to listened to the witness,
they would have gotten him.
They would have gotten him. They still would have had their clearance rate. They still would have put 4 guys away. You just wouldn't have put the wrong 4 guys away.
Correct.
That's what I'm saying. It's like the cops had it out for these particular 4 guys, specifically the Jimerson guy.
Well, they're
God
black.
only knows how many run-ins they maybe have had with these young men. It's like, I don't know the history there, but I can't imagine there was none.
This whole case implies a lot.
It really does. There's a lot left unsaid and unconfirmed, but I think you're probably on to something very legitimate. So they were all convicted of this crime. The Fort Heights Four were exonerated and freed in 1996. They'd gone into prison in like 1978. God. Robinson, Johnson, and Rodriguez were sentenced to life in prison. Johnson's sentence was later reduced to 65 years. I'm not sure why. He may have provided some information or something.
They were in prison for so long that all the styles and fashions were just starting to come back around.
I know.
Oh my God. Their closet is fresh again.
Yeah, they can wear their own
They
clothes.
could just come out and be like, oh, bell bottoms.
These are back?
Still in.
All right, great.
I haven't missed a beat. Oh my God.
So again, from Northwestern Law, quote, the Fort Heights Four then filed civil rights suits against the Cook County Sheriff's Police. Thank God. Through the discovery process in that litigation, it became apparent that Gray's false confession had been coerced. The police misconduct prompted Cook County to settle the men's claims for $36 million.
So this is the same county that my case.
Cook County has a notorious history.
Yeah, the Chicago County.
Yeah. The largest such settlement in the United States history, at least at that time.
Damn. That's a lot of fucking money.
It is a lot of money. In July of 2001, Gray's conviction was finally thrown out with a lengthy opinion by Circuit Court Judge William D. Neal. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office appealed the ruling, but the appeal was rendered moot in November of 2002 when Illinois Governor George H. Ryan granted her a pardon based on innocence. So she had been sitting in jail still waiting to get out on like perjury charges and shit while these guys had been exonerated.
No, I thought she was out in 87.
Oh, wait, no, you're right. She was.
But
Sorry.
she was
Sorry.
pardoned. She was still a convicted felon.
Correct. Sorry. Yes, you're correct. She was released on a deal in 87, but she still had all this on her record.
Right.
Yep. Okay. So he granted her a pardon based on innocence. The pardon qualified Gray for approximately $100,000 in automatic compensation from the Illinois Court of Claims and cleared the way for a civil rights claim brought on her behalf to proceed.
Oh, $100,000.
That's just the automatic payout from the state.
No, I know, but it's just such a fucking slap in the face.
It really is.
She
It's
probably could
pittance.
still sue and get more.
She did.
Oh, good.
She did. I'm not sure what the payout ended up being, but someone did file on her behalf a civil rights claim, and I believe she also received compensation because, again, she doesn't have the capacity to go through all of these systems herself and to it makes it so much more disgusting to me. They essentially manipulated and took advantage of a child.
They preyed on this person.
They preyed on her, knowing that she did not have the intellectual capacity to advocate for herself.
They plucked her out at random.
Pretty much.
And then
just
when she
fucked her whole life.
When
she happened to like hang around with some of these
tell
people.
the truth, she got charged with murder and perjury.
Murder, rape, and perjury. Yeah.
Rape?
Yeah.
God.
Because she was there, and according to them. So, Yeah. Paula spent 24 years in prison as an innocent, developmentally disabled Black woman. I can't even begin to imagine how horrific that time must have been for her and for the other men convicted. And while I'm thrilled they were able to collect settlements that would set them and their families up essentially for life, the reality is that no amount of money can ever repair the psychological harm of wrongful conviction. And I feel like every wrongful conviction is egregious.
Yeah.
And this Paula's situation just feels especially sickening to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just so, like Lucy, like you said, it's so obvious that they like plucked her out and went, you'll be easy
You'll do.
To manipulate.
You'll fill
They
this
preyed
hole
on her.
that we have.
We can get her to say whatever we want.
Exactly. And solve this shit in 5 minutes and then go home and go to bed.
And actually, you know what? Paula put up quite the fucking fight.
Yeah,
I will
she
say.
did.
Because it took them 2 days of illegally holding her and terrorizing her
The motel thing is so fucking sick.
It's
to get her to say
disgusting.
what they wanted her to say.
Yeah.
Like,
Because they knew that they probably wouldn't be able to hold her for 48 hours actually at jail because there'd be too many checks and balances keeping them from doing that.
And it just
So they
seems
just
like,
fucking...
it just seems like she was kicked in to ensure that they got a confession from somebody
Correct.
to get these 4 guys. She was just like an
the
extra.
linchpin.
She was
She
the
was the
linchpin.
linchpin. And she happened to be connected to them in some way. I believe they like lived in the same neighborhood. They did know each other. So she was the right for them linchpin. But it's like, I don't know. It's fucked up. Shit like this just makes me deeply sad.
And had those 3 lawyers not just picked that case up and been like, wait a minute, this is fucked up. Let's pursue this.
not even
They're
lawyers, they were
not even
journalists.
lawyers. Yeah, they're journalism
Oh, they're
majors.
journalists.
Yeah. They just they picked this up. They brought it. They needed assistance with like the DNA testing, so I believe that's where they reached out to and worked with the Innocence Project. But I think they were just like working on a story for class. And the Ford Heights 4 was a really famous story, 20 years ago. So they picked it.
Imagine being a college student and then
Discovering that.
saving 4 people's lives and bringing 3 people to justice.
I'm too
It's pretty
tired.
amazing.
I'm so tired.
There is a picture on the drive, which will be on the blog, of a couple members of the Ford Heights 4 with these journalism students in a photo, and it's very sweet.
oh my
Like,
God,
it's
they're
clear.
so young.
Yeah, they're children. I mean, like, these girls are fucking babies. They're little college kids. The one on the right looks exactly like Kenyon.
Yeah.
Exactly like Kenyon.
Yeah, she does.
Totally.
It's kind of scary, actually.
Oh, it's a really sweet photo.
Yeah. Anyway,
Well,
that's my case.
that's a great segue to plug Justin Brooks's book one more time. It's called You Might Go to Prison Even Though You're Innocent.
Yep.
Highly recommend picking that shit up.
Oh my God. Okay, well, this
I'm going to go up my Zoloft
Yep.
again.
Yeah.
The limit does not exist.
I think 500 milligrams is probably sufficient, right? That's fine.
That'll
right?
do.
Yeah. That'll do.
Okay,
Okay, thank you for listening.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Wine and Crime. Our cover art is by Kala Yip, music by Phil Young and Corey Wendell, editing by Jonathan Camp. Check out our website and blog at wineandcrimepodcast.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Wine and Crime Pod. If you have questions, answers, or recommendations to share, email us at wineandcrimepodcast@gmail.com. Episodes are available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, basically wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And if you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. It is the best way to spread the word. If you'd like to show your support, visit our Patreon page to keep this podcast and the wine flowing. Cheers!
Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.